Hi and welcome to Red Eye and this CEO interview with Jonas Ehinger from Gapwaves. We're doing this interview slightly differently because today we're being hosted in Gapwaves' office in Gothenburg. We will talk about the third quarter of 2023, Gapwaves' recent product launch, as well as their supply strategy and their most recent investment into Sensrad, where they have the option to purchase an additional stake. So Jonas, could you please tell us a bit about the third quarter?
Absolutely. Yes, as you can see in the report, we had lower sales than the third quarter last year, but that's mostly due to extraordinary income or revenue that we had last year, especially with the signing of the Bosch agreement and also the sale of some production equipment. So almost 67% of the revenues in Q3 2022 were related to that type of income. And in this quarter, this year, we have not had that type of revenue, so it's a big difference, of course. Now, we're also in an investment phase in Gapwaves. So we're investing quite a bit or a lot in building up our capacity and capability to become a supplier to the automotive tier 1 customers. And this means that we're adding to the organization in terms of capacity in engineering, but also in all other aspects, and not least supply chain management and development, as well as production capability and quality management in the company. All of these things are required to be a supplier in the automotive industry.
And speaking of investing, you recently launched a new type of an antenna. Could you tell us a bit more about this antenna?
Absolutely. It was a great launch in Berlin a couple of weeks ago in the middle of September at a industry event in Germany. And we launched a new antenna technology using the same principles as waveguide antennas, but a new special way, which is also patented, to build and assemble the antennas. And I actually brought a few samples that I wanted to show you, because in automotive industry, the footprint or the size of the antenna, like thickness and the thickness is affecting the size of the radar sensor. And in cars today, there's not a lot of space, so obviously every millimeter counts. And as I've shown in some material recently, I wanted to show you the difference. And these are precision products, so we have to use gloves so we don't get grease on the antenna. This is a traditional waveguide antenna. And an example. So it's made in two halves. It's normally in plastic, which is metallized and then soldered together. For precision parts, that's a complex process. Now with the mmWave technology that we launched, you can see the difference in size and footprint. This one is not using precision manufactured plastic parts that have to be metallized. It's all metal. It's a number of very thin metal sheets that can be stamped or etched and then welded or riveted together. So all of these production methods are have a long history in all kinds of industries. So it's not a complex production process. It's easily scalable, for the large volumes that are existing in automotive.
And I can't really tell the thickness of the new technology, but it's clearly way thinner than the old one.
Yeah, more or less a factor of 5-fold in this example.
And speaking a bit about production, you have previously been more of a license, selling licenses to tier 1 customers. And then you have started to be more of a supplier to these tier ones. Can you tell us a bit more, like what do you mean by being a supplier?
Absolutely, and just to give some background on that, for Gapwaves to enter into automotive, I mean, we come from a technology and research origin at Chalmers Technical University, and of course, being a young company with no automotive track record, we had to start somewhere. And fortunately, in the partnership with Veoneer, we were able to enter into a license agreement as a starting point. We've had our eyes on the supplier role for quite a few years, but to get into the automotive industry, it takes time, and it also means that you have to do it stepwise. Next relationship was with Hella, and there is a license agreement, of course, to have access to our technology. But there's also design and development of the antennas. So we're doing all the design and development, and we're also supporting the production of the antennas with our production partner, Frencken. And now we're ready for the next step, which is in fact manifested already in the Bosch agreement, which nominates Gapwaves as the supplier of the antennas. So we do licensing of our technology, we do engineering to develop and design the antennas, and we also do production engineering to develop the production method and production process and certifying that. And then we will be the supplier. And to answer your question, being a supplier for Gapwaves means that the customers buy the antennas from us, and we oversee the production and the delivery of the antennas and invoice the antennas, of course. And that's a dramatically different and much more potent position in the value chain than just having license royalties. So it's been on our in our plans for several years that this is the way we have to go to be able to scale up the company and to grow the company.
Mm. And that's something we have discussed in the past also with the gross profit in absolute dollars you earn per antenna compared to the license fee is significantly larger. And speaking of moving in the value chain, you recently also made an investment into Sensrad. Can you just give us a brief overview of why you invested in the company?
Sensrad represents a new strategic addition to Gapwaves. We're fully focused on growing and expanding our antenna business in automotive. But there's other market segments outside automotive that exists with very different market dynamics that are much less developed, if you want, and they don't have the same requirements and regulations, obviously not the same volumes, that have much better price points and pricing, much more attractive pricing compared to automotive. Automotive has the volumes, other segments, industrial applications in freight and industry, mining, farming, etc., and also presence detection in smart cities, for instance, or traffic monitoring. The price point is much, much more attractive. And these segments outside automotive, they ideally want to buy an off-the-shelf, high-resolution radar sensor and not build it themselves, like automotive tier ones are doing. And we have had customers making these statements to us in our antenna discussions, that ideally they'd like to just buy an off-the-shelf, highly capable radar sensor that they can integrate in their systems. And that is the basic reason for the Sensrad investment, which is the first step for us. And another long-term advantage is really that ultimately the automotive industry and cars will need the same capability type of radar sensors. But that's probably 5, 6, maybe 7 years down the road. And at that point, it means that Gapwaves and Sensrad have already been working on these technologies for more than 5 years. And we will be way ahead of competition. And there is no other antenna company that are able to work with that type of antennas already today. So I think we will be in a much stronger position once the volume market of automotive moves into this field also.
And you also have the option to buy an additional stake in Sensrad. Why or why not would you pursue this option?
Ultimately, Gapwaves is not an investment company. We're an industrial company, and we have a growth ambition, a very strong growth ambition. So obviously, we want to be a majority shareholder in Sensrad to be able to capture fully the synergies of having a radar sensor business unit also. But that requires also Sensrad to make certain progress and achieve certain milestones, which have been discussed with Camcom Group, which is the other owner of Sensrad and the current majority shareholder. So it's an option that we can exercise under certain conditions. If those conditions are not met, the option is not mandatory on behalf of Gapwaves. So there is obviously a certain opportunity to time this correctly in collaboration with the other shareholder, of course.
And what is the time frame of timing this investment?
The original plan stipulates middle of next year to take the next step. But if the conditions are not met or they're right, I'm sure we'll find a good solution, primarily aiming at Sensrad, a good solution for Sensrad moving forward. But the other shareholder, Camcom, wants Gapwaves to be in the lead of scaling up, the scaling up phase for Sensrad.
All right. And for my final question, what do you look forward to in the next 12 months?
We're looking at Gapwaves. We're looking forward at continuing scaling up and continuing to deliver in our current contracts, but also get ready to move into the supply phase and supplier phase, which is happening. We have several projects, antenna projects that are going into production already, starting already next year, which is really an important milestone for us. And of course, obviously, we're aiming to bring on board more customers and more tier ones. And for Sensrad, it's about getting the commercial product into the market and launch that and win the first contracts in those segments outside of automotive.
All right, perfect. Thank you very much for your time.
Rasmus, thank you so much for spending time with Gapwaves today.